Alright everyone, welcome to my transactions video following on from week 3 of the World Pokemon Federation. So the most recent match I played was against Karma, and this is valid for my week 4 match, which will be against the Jersey Fits. And his team, that I don't remember the name of, his team is the Temple Noctowls. So I think it's pretty, there was a lot of thought process that went into this. I actually spent a total of 14 hours throughout a day. I was also doing other stuff. I wasn't at work, so I wasn't doing as much other stuff as I often would be, but I was doing some other stuff at the time. Like doing and playing some other games, but thinking back and forth with 7 different people who I talked to at different points throughout that time. I know across the full time I spent, I think I talked to Keith, Sheldon, and Toxic like 5 or 6 different times throughout that period. I went over an insane amount of options that I had available to me, and ultimately wound up coming to the decision that I did. As you can see, Toxtricity there, the league's kill leader, unsurprisingly, at 11 kills after week 3, with the next place being, I believe, Hydreigon at 7. And there's my my logo, the transparent version of the Leon, the intelligent Leon, made by Sleepy, who I will probably try to remember, who actually will link in my channel description. I meant to do that earlier. So yeah, what has changed is not the demise of what once was. This transaction does involve a big link to my team. So I wanted to go over the different thought processes and the things that I considered when deciding to make transactions. Ordinarily, I actually only intend to make one transaction at a time. If you guys watch my PDL, Pokemon Draft League season, that league forced you to only make one transaction at a time, and you can only make a total of 3. In this league, you can make a total of 5 transactions. But in history, I only tend to make single transactions, except for when I've been taking over a team partway through a season, in which case I tend to make a very drastic number of transactions, but that's for, I think, different reasons. But yeah, so this is what has changed and the demise of what once was. So why did I need transactions? So my previous team before the transactions was my Champ, the Garchomp, Base Boost, the Toxtricity, Fishy, the Alomomola, Hidingidolo, the Indeedee, which gave me access to both the male and female forms of Indeedee, the Doggy, my Lycanroc Day, Bala, my Quilladin, Beautiful, my Rebombi, Purple Lad, my Espeon, the absolute Chad that he is, Chip TM, my Skarmory, Best Girl, the absolute waifu and most just delightful looking Pokemon Doublade, and High Fives, my Hooper Unbound. So it was a pretty strong team, but there were 3 types that I came to multiple times as things that I felt that I needed better answers to. So I'm just going to go over them one at a time. So the first one is Flying type. So my team at the time previously had Flying Resists before my transactions in the Toxtricity, the Lycanroc Day, the Skarmory, and the Doublade. Now, clever viewers might notice that 2 of these are actually defensive pokes, because Lycanroc Day and Toxtricity do not have any particularly great natural bulk, and are not very consistent flying checks. And then Skarmory and Doublade are both weak to the Fire type. May not fix that, but they're also both very physically oriented, so a lot of special flying types are able to muscle through them. Obviously there's no Z-moves this generation, which helps, but a Hurricane is not very much appreciated by either of them. So I wanted to get something which was more capable of speccing into special defense. So that was a very big factor in deciding one of the transactions that I made. The second type is the Grass type. It was another thing where I had good resists, but they're mostly very physically oriented, or the Toxtricity. So my Dragon type, it was Garchomp, which does not resist Grass. So it takes hits from that neutrally. And then I had like Rebombi, which is very frail. I had the Skarmory, which does not have very good special defense. So a lot of special attacking grass types have a secondary type, or have Chlorophyll with then Fire Weather Ball if they were in Sun, which also helps them to break through the Doublade. Or they can like Leech Seed spam against me to some extent. Obviously we noticed in week 1 that Espeon makes that pretty difficult. depending on the particular grass type, but it was still not something fun. Quilladin is also quite oriented on the Fizz Def side as well, though he definitely can run, especially defensive, but for some resists. Alright, and then finally it was the offensive electric type. So fast electric types, basically every team that I was playing against had one. I looked at I think it was like the only non-fast electric types I was playing was going to be a Rotom Frost, but I was going to be playing Jolteon, I was going to be playing Galvantula, I was going to be playing Mega Manectric, I was going to be playing Zeraora, I was going to be playing Tapu Koko, I was going to be playing just all of like the, not even just the great fast electrics, some of them like a Galvantula and like the Jolteon, I don't think are particularly amazing as far as electric types go, but they were very actively a challenge for my team to be able to deal with from a defensive standpoint. So that was another thing that was a big concern, because my electric resists Toxtricity is again not an incredibly defensive poke, and I didn't want to have to force it into running defensive. And then Garchomp and Quilladin are both weak to the ice type, so then like an electric and ice combination, which a good few of these Pokemon have access to, but also a few of them have. Also, I think I was playing Heliolisk as well, or I was considering picking up Heliolisk, one of the two. But yeah, so they're weak to, or they don't necessarily take on a special stab move of a different type from them. Yeah, so then obviously Alomomola is also weak to both grass and electric, and I felt like it was at times going to be a very prominent specialty defensive switch in to a lot of checks, so then not having great specially defensive resists to the main two types that it's weak to, I thought was quite an issue. And it was something that was coming up a lot in my building, so that was why I thought I needed transactions. I also felt that there were a few Pokemon. Well, then we get to the next question. So who could I drop? There were two Pokemon that obviously I wound up dropping, because I made two transactions, and that's consequent. None of them I made coach transactions. I did mention briefly to a coach, but he took quite a while to respond. I didn't wind up making any coach transactions with him. I'm not sure that I would have benefited more from the transactions with him rather than the transactions that I made. So there were two Pokemon who, after week 3, had not come to any matchup at that point. So I'd played 3 weeks, I'd won 2 of them, I'd lost 1 of them, and I had brought 9 Pokemon, right, of the 11 that I had. A few of them had come every game, being the Garchomp, Toxtricity, and Alomomola. I think Garchomp and Alomomola are probably going to come to basically every game, and Garchomp's going to be and Toxtricity is probably going to be coming to a lot, because, you know, it's a tier 2, you want it to be able to come to a lot of games. But I had not brought a tier 1 of mine, the Hooper Unbound, so it was something which very much I had in my mind that I needed to drop, because I just felt that Toxtricity was covering a lot of the niche that it had very well, from the especially offensive standpoint, and with webs, I felt like Garchomp was a lot better. Just the inability to be taken out by a lot of priority, which can deal well with the Hooper Unbound. I didn't really need that specific fairy weakness, I think, as well as the bug weakness wasn't great of itself, so I wound up dropping the Hooper Unbound. I do think it is a very, very ridiculously strong Pokemon. I do think it's good with webs, but I felt like my team didn't really need it as much as the other webs abusers on my team I felt were better for my team. And I felt like I could use something which had a bit more utility for my team besides just a specially defensive stat and an immunity to the psychic type. Because I already had amazing psychic checks between, obviously the Espeon, the Skarmory, the Doublade are all very good defensive psychic checks. The Doublade and Ribombee are also very good offensive checks against psychics, and Espeon gets good coverage for it, as well as it can run through a lot of the more especially defensive ones, and it can bulk them out with a Calm Mind or Wish set because it's good natural SPDF. And then the physical ones obviously can get hard stonewalled by Skarmory and tanked out by the Doublade. So at that point I had very good psychic checks, so I wasn't as concerned about an immunity. So Hooper Unbound I was definitely thinking of dropping, because I just was not getting the value out of it for what I was paying for a tier 1, and I just think that was down to team design. I think it's more my team was not concentrated enough on pivots. It had too many. It was too much a team which used webs or which used defensive pivots, whereas I think offensive pivots are what serves to make Hooper Unbound ridiculously broken on some teams. And when I previously used him, that's what I had felt. I just felt like I wasn't getting that here. And the drop with Hooper Unbound, I think, came the break to... There was the second Pokemon, who I brought once and didn't really do anything. I didn't do enough damage the one time that I needed to do damage, and I wound up dropping one of my two new Pokemon that I picked up from this generation, sadly. And I was sad to see it go, but I did feel like it had to go, was the Indeedee. I just was finding that Espeon was a lot more consistent. I was finding that no one really had teams which weren't able to deal well with Psychic Spam. The Psychic Terrain nerf from 1.5 times to 1.3 times this generation really just meant that Indeedee never had the insanity that was Tapu Lele. The fact that both of its stabs were resisted by steel types, and it only really had Mystical Fire, which, while impressive, is fairly low base power, so against Pokemon that's not 4 times super effective, against with Indeedee's relatively low special attack, is pretty sad, honestly. It was a real big... It was definitely a question that I had as to which Pokemon I should drop, but I just came to the resolution that Psychic Spam just was not working. I do not think the triple Psychic archetype was good enough. I thought, in my experience, I've always thought that having 2 Psychics is pretty strong, so I was trying out the triple Psychic with the Psychic Terrain, but it just was not coming. Espeon was already doing the damage that I needed to do with... I was already doing the damage that I needed to do without the Psychic Terrain, and it wasn't doing the damage I needed to do to just, like, break absolutely insanely with the Psychic Terrain, because it was only 1.3 instead of 1.5. So it just wound up coming to the point that I just did not think that I could run it anymore. Indeedee was also it's just very, very frail, especially on the physical side, and Hooper Unbound is also very frail on the physical side. And while I had the Doublade and the Skarmory to come check a lot of physical attackers, I didn't want to have to be forced into running, you know, Skarmory every week just because Pokemon, you know, have access to Earthquake sort of thing. Yeah. Right, and Quillard in as well because of that. This does also lose me another immunity though. I lost my Ghost type immunity, which had good synergy with the Espeon and the Doublade. So I will admit that maybe that would have an impact on my team if I did not back that up, but basically I just felt like the Psychic Spam was not coming to enough games to justify bringing it. I felt like Webs was coming so much more that it just was not tenable to keep using a tier 3 slot and a tier 1 slot on Pokemon that most games were just not coming, and I don't think we're forcing enough prep that Espeon did not already force. Just honestly, Hooper only really forces offensive prep because there just does not exist defensive prep to it. So then, if you can get a Pokemon that they can prep defensively for, they then have to prep defensively for it, was my thought process in relation to that. So then the question came to, what Pokemon did I pick up? I looked at so many Pokemon. Both of these Pokemon I was taking from my free picks, relatively speaking. I already had 2 tier 3s. I had the Alomomola, the Raybombi, and the Espeon all in tier 3, so I could keep that as a combination of tier 3s. I already had a Garchomp as a tier 1, as well as Skarmory, I think. Was that a tier 1B or a tier 2A? I don't remember, but I had the Garchomp, right? So I was free to look at all different sorts of combinations. I think I figured out I could combine, what was it, a tier 1A and a tier 4A, and or like, so that was a tier 1B and a tier 3B. Then I could combine a tier 2A and a tier 3A, or 2 tier 2Bs, and I was looking at so many options. It was ridiculous the amount of Pokemon I went through. Looking at everything from like Conkeldurr to Celebi to like randomly running up with like a Mega Swampert or like some Raincore, Obstagoon, Alakazam. I looked at all of the ground types that were options, as well as the electric types with the Volt Absorb or Lightning Rod abilities, as well as a Alola Marowak, though that was taken, I believe, which is very sad because I do like my Alola Marowak. Like, the amount of Pokemon that I went through was honestly quite insane. There was one point where I was like, oh dude, I'm definitely taking Diggersby, or I'm definitely taking, what's the other one? Thunderous Therian was very much a Pokemon that I was playing around with the idea of, though I wound up deciding against it because it's still weak to Ice, as well as Dugtrio. I just didn't feel was fast enough. The main problem I was having with a lot of these Pokemon is that they're already faster, and then they can just run a Shuka Berry for like my Scarf Dugtrio, and then, you know, what's the point? Well, they could run a Shed Shell, so I didn't feel like Dugtrio was the play in this specific team. I didn't feel like it benefited enough from webs. I just didn't feel like the build needed it. So I wound up deciding on a different Pokemon. So I actually wound up picking the Mega Steelix first. I went through so many Pokemon, right? I was looking for something which was able to deal with Zeraora, able to deal with Jolteon, able to deal with Galvantula. I'm gonna look at the list quickly to see. Heliolisk was the Pokemon I was considering taking, not the Pokemon that was taken. I think I was looking at Dugtrio and Heliolisk, in all honesty. So the Mega Steelix absolutely was something that was perfect for a lot of what I needed. I didn't feel like I had a poor enough fire type match. Well, sorry, I did feel like I had a poor enough fire type matchup without the other transaction that I made. I felt like I needed a fire resist very importantly. I even considered Heat Shred at one point, but I felt like my ground matchup was not that great. I don't feel like my ground matchup is too bad as it stands, despite the fact that I do have on paper a very long list of ground weaknesses, or at least a list of ground weaknesses. At this point, that is the Toxtricity, the Mega Steelix, the Lycanroc Day, the Doggo one, and the Doublade. So that is 4 weaknesses, but Doublade and Mega Steelix are very defensive. They can take a lot of hits from it. Toxtricity is very offensive. It can threaten out a lot of opposing. It can beat a lot of ground types, as we saw last week against Karma. I literally did kill their Nidoking with my Toxtricity, even though it does wall my dual stab, just because of the Boom Burst. It's ridiculous coverage with the Punk Rock boost. So I do think that is not a crazy thing. I had no issue with fighting matchup. My fighting weaknesses are like just Lycanroc and Mega Steelix. I didn't have any more before. I didn't have any more resist before that I dropped, because both of them had secondary types which were weak to fighting. So it was legit like Ribombee 4 times resist, Skarmory easy chunk, Espeon resist, Doublade immunity, Toxtricity resist and offensively threaten, and Alomomola will Jarchomp have a lot of bulk. I can run like a really bulky set and get the rough skin, possibly also Rocky Helmet chip off. And Mega Steelix has such a good defense stat that it honestly is not a very big concern. It can run a lot of special defensive sets. It was a ground type, so an electric immunity that wasn't weak to grass, which is very important because Zeraora and Tapu Koko get access to the grass knot. Hidden Power Grass is a bit gross. It was a whole big thing, and I wound up coming to the decision that Mega Steelix was the best choice for my team. I did appreciate the extra Stealth Rocker, but very importantly, I also appreciated the extra Roar to be anti-setup. And honestly, he has ridiculous coverage between physical and special, and doesn't have a very good special attack, but pre-Mega it has access to Sheer Force, which can boost a lot of special moves. Mega Steelix has a ridiculous amount of coverage, so it's very easy to not have to invest much into and have to make it so that it's not setup fodder. Obviously last week I had to invest a lot and run Expert Belt on the Alomomola to deal with a substitute Mega Altaria that never hit the field. Or that never clicked substitute. My opponent did confirm later that it was a substitute variant, and that in fact they were intending to substitute and set up on the Alomomola. But I had Ice Beam specifically for that, as well as the specially defensive investment, as well as the physical defense investment, were designed to be able to deal with the Mega Altaria somewhat well. Which is just pretty funny, in all honesty. So yeah, Mega Steelix is very good. I do actually really like the Triple Steel Core. I've previously run a few different Triple Steel Cores. I think this is the first time I've ever had Doublade on it, but other Triple Steel Cores I've done well with. One was Magina, Duraludon, and Melmetal, which is another combination of like both very physically defensive and specially defensive steals. A more offensive combination of Aegislash, Heatran, and Magnezone in an Ubers League. I thought that was very fun. I actually wound up winning in that was the World Pokemon Federation off-season, the most recent one, not the current one. And that was really, really strong. I think I only wound up dropping one game. Magnezone got a ridiculous number of kills, and Aegislash and Heatran were able to pick apart a lot of teams defensively. So obviously I have experience in dealing with a lot of ground weaknesses on teams like that. As long as you accompany them with good dragon types, because they're very good fire resists. So I've got the Garchomp, as well as the second Pokemon that I decided to pick up, because, you know, I figured I might as well get a fighting check, I might as well get a fire resist, and it was free. Latias. Latias is a Pokemon that I've never actually drafted without Latios as well. Just because Latios and Latias, I thought it'd be funny to draft both together one time. I think I had Mega Volterra as well, and it was a pretty fun team. But yeah, Latias. This is a legendary, so it's inherently broken, right? I just picked it up. Dragon and Psychic type with the ability to Levitate. I think Zygarde 10% I don't think is drafted, but I think the big Zygarde is. I'm not sure if I play it though, off the top of my head, but I feel like I've got a pretty decent matchup against it. But basically 1000 Arrows, I guess, is kind of spooky. But a lot of ground types can't deal with both Skarmory and Latias. Latias is very good at dealing with a lot of more especially offensive ones, especially since they've already gone through Nidoking. It can chunk a lot of hits, and it's immune to Earth Power. Skarmory is able to take a lot of the physical variant alternatives. Latias is very much capable offensively and has access to Soul Dew if I wanted to run a Psychic Drake immediate offensive set with Roost, or even like a weird Outrage set if the need be. Fortunately it doesn't get Dragon Dance like Latios, but it is a lot of very strong defensive moves. It's got access to Refresh, it has access to Recovery in both Recover and Roost, which are the same move, but you should run Roost always because of animation times on cart, even though that doesn't actually matter outside of on cart. But it's got ridiculous coverage, it's got Bolt Beam, it's got Surf, it's got the Dual Stab, and it has the access to the setup in Carmine, as well as I believe Cosmic Power, which is really no good. It's another Wish support one for my team, which I did already have the Espeon and the Alomomola, both of which I run Wish support on for the team, even sometimes I think both at once. But yeah, it's really good. It's a Pokemon that I could see coming to a lot of matchups. Not necessarily every matchup, but certainly more than I think the Hooper Unbound was coming to. I looked at a lot of teams and the Hooper Unbound just was realistically not going to be making an appearance. And I think it's really good that I do have a Pokemon that I think is actually going to come to games. I do like Latias. I would like to give it the full chance. But basically I thought it was very important to have another good fire resist, because I did have a few fire weaknesses. Alomomola is a good fire resist, but I wanted something which was not weak to the electric and grass, which I had mentioned before was very strong because, yeah, like Rotom Heat, for example, would be pretty spooky to deal with, though I think I already beat it, or was that Rotom Wash? I know I killed a Rotom. I might have killed two. But, you know, just another electric resist I thought would be pretty nice, as well as this one isn't weak to water, which is pretty good. It's a water resist, as my other water resist was Alomomola, which is still weak to electric and grass. You know, no one wants to get 6-0'd by Lantern, you know. But yeah, I thought this was the best combination of Pokemon for my team. I hope you guys can hear all of the thought process that went into it, because I did spend genuinely basically all of the waking hours of the day trying to figure this out, trying to get a team that I thought could be the best it could possibly be. Because outside this, obviously the Lycanroc hadn't come to a game yet. But it's a very matchup dependent Pokemon in my experience. Yeah, there are a lot of Pokemon that I can't deal with, but it certainly doesn't come every week. It is definitely a tier 4. But at that point, I felt the other 8 Pokemon had come to every single game. Obviously the DG had come to a game as well, but the Garchomp, the Toxtricity, the Alomomola, the Quilladin, the Ribombee, the Espeon, the Skarmory, and the Doublade had all come to at least one game, and in my opinion they all put in a decent amount of work. Even the Quilladin, I think, just was in the game and then it died. But I still think it put in enough work that I'm more than happy to have it on my team. It is just a tier 5. I really felt like I had a really good team outside of the weaknesses that I have, and I feel like I check those weaknesses a lot better now. I have ridiculously good answers to Dragon and Fairy types between my triple Steel Core, which I just absolutely love, as well as the Ribombi as an extra answer, the Toxtricity as an extra answer to the Fairy types. So I do absolutely love how difficult it is for a lot of people to be able to break through my team with the triple Wish support. Like, who knows, maybe one time I'll literally just bring the 3 Wish support and like a Doublade and Doublade, like a bulky Jarchomp and the Mega Steelix or something. It's a pretty wacky and pretty fun team. So yeah, I feel like my team has a lot of really good synergy with them. I do feel a little bit Ghost Weak. That I think is the main thing. Like, I've talked about how I deal with my ground weakness with the Latias as well as my fire weakness with the Latias. I feel pretty well, as well as my ground weakness I already dealt with pretty decently with Quilladin. So I just got something which combined a lot of the types that I was finding were common weaknesses to my answers to these types. So obviously my ground, both of my switch-ins were fire weak. All 3 of them, sorry, the Skarmory, the Ribombi, and the Quilladin. So now I got one that isn't, that resists it even. So that's pretty good. I do really like my chances, my prospects of going through the rest of this season. I love the WPF. I actually got elected mod. I probably should have mentioned this at the start, but I have been made a mod of the A division now. Apparently, you just need to get like 5 kills in a median of games with Toxtricity. So like in a median of my games, Toxtricity has gotten 5 kills. Also in the mode of games, I think, if you go 1-5-5. But yeah, so it's a really good community. I'm really happy to be playing in this division. There's a lot of really tough matches coming up. There's a lot of really good players I'm going to be playing against. And I hope you guys stick along and stay along for it. Because I do think this is going to be a really good season. Alright guys, so thank you for watching. And sitting through what was kind of basically a PowerPoint with me talking, but it had pictures of cute Pokemon like my waifu Doublade, and, Alomomola. So yeah, I really hope you guys do ask whatever questions you want down in the comments below. There's a lot of thought process, like I said, that I put into things like this. If anyone wants to ask me for advice, my Discord is electric_3546. I'm probably going to start putting it in the description of my videos in the future. And, definitely come along and check out the WPF.